first sentence is where we should begin.
Okay.
And it's a very complex thing that he's going to tell us about. So we'll take a moment of concentration and begin. If we go back to page 103 at the end, we'll see that, let me just get here we are. He is seeing and experiencing things. He is hearing music, and even the touch is a charm. And the heart drew a deeper breath of power. And in that place, earth nature's shining origins dwell. And these perfect plans, which the Shakti, divine Shakti molds, on which she molds her works, repose in a framework of established fate. Well, they have to rest in that established fate because that's the way the creation works. And when they repose in it, they rest in it. They lie, or, well, I would say quiet, calm, peace, tranquility. They are for our definitions of repose, resting in a framework of established fate. Now, everything is mapped out. We see that. And these sumptuous lineaments, I don't remember that we did this. Let's go through this a bit. In the sumptuous lineaments traced by desire. So these things, these lineaments are distinctive shapes or contours or lines. And they are sumptuous. They are very rich and superior. And we are seeing here that many things are vainly attempted, or even one in vain. And that has been the history of our earth. But here he's seeing from another vision, from a much higher place. And he's seeing that the things are indeed mapped out and scheduled in time. And we see that things are indeed predestined. I would say the end is always predestined, but the temporal period can be one of chaos and great storm. So he's talking of the mind's labyrinth plots and the riches that are still unfound or still uncaught by our lives, but they are unsullied. What is this? I didn't hear that.
I think people need to mute their phone.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yes, okay. Oh dear.
I've
Okay.
Joydeep, please mute your phone. Oh.
Okay, so these riches that are unfound or still uncaught by our lives are not soiled or polluted. That's unsullied. Both literally and figuratively, that word is not soiled or polluted by the attaint. The attaint is kind of a stain of mortal thought, and they abide in that pellucid atmosphere. Now, our vague beginnings are overtaken there and in that pellucid atmosphere. Our middle terms are sketched out in prescient lines. Oh, prescient is having foreknowledge of something. And our finished ends live already anticipated. This brilliant roof of our descending plane, intercepting the free boon of heaven's air, admits small inrushes of a mighty breath, or fragrant circuits through gold lattices. It shields our ceiling of terrestrial mind from deathless suns and the streaming of God's rain. Yet catalyzes a strange irised glow, and bright dews drip from the immortal sky. Well, we need to look at this a little closely. So there is this predestination because our finished ends are already anticipated and they're living. This brilliant roof of our descending plane, intercepting the free boon of heaven's air, admits small inrushes of a mighty breath or fragrant circuits through gold lattices. A lattice is, of course, an open framework and usually in a crisscross pattern. So it's allowing these inrushes of the divine breath, the mighty breath, and yet it shields our ceiling of terrestrial mind. What is it shielded from? From deathless suns and the streaming of God's rain. We've talked about this before, that no one could see the divine in his actual form. Mother said no one could see me in my actual form. And I talked to you about Huta, I believe, having seen Mother from the waist up and couldn't even speak when we were meeting together. So it is shielding us, our ceiling of terrestrial mind, from deathless suns and the streaming of God's rain, the grace that comes down. And yet it canalizes. Now, canalize is an interesting word here. It gives a certain direction to, it provides a certain outlet. It diverts into a strange or certain channel, this strange irised glow. Irised, of course, is iridescent, having colors like those of the rainbow. And bright dews drip from the immortal sky. Well, that's what we are finding, that bright dews drip from the immortal sky. We feel it. Some of us experience aspects of it through the higher areas of our minds, especially the intuitive. And it can come in forms of poetry, in forms of art, in forms of music. It can come in so many ways. And now he says, a passage for the powers that move our days. Now, there is an interesting statement from the Letters on Yoga on these powers. And he begins by telling us, quote, "These are the forces and beings that are interested in maintaining the falsehoods they have created in the world of the ignorance, and in putting them forward as the truth which men must follow." Isn't that truly what's happening now in so many areas? So what do we see next? He calls them, he says, in India, they are termed asuras, rakshasas, pisachas, beings respectively of the mentalized vital, middle vital, and lower vital planes, who are in opposition to the gods, the powers of light. These too are powers, for they too have their cosmic field in which they exercise their function and authority. And some of them were once divine powers, the former gods, Purvedeva, as they are called somewhere in the Mahabharata, who have fallen towards the darkness by revolt against the divine will behind the cosmos. Well, I feel that these powers that Sri Aurobindo is speaking of in this line are the powers of light. And they move our days. Of course, the powers of darkness do that as well. And then he says, occult, behind this grosser nature's walls. And we have a big session on occult, but a gossamer marriage hall of mind with form. And again, there's a lot to do, is hidden by a tapestry of dreams. Heaven's meanings steal through it as through a veil. Its inner sight sustains this outer scene. Well, this is very, very powerful, very powerful. The meanings of heaven can steal through it. They can just come like a thief through it. He speaks of a thief in another part of Savitri when he says a thief comes into us. I think it's in book 1. It's in The Secret Knowledge, yes. So heaven's meanings steal through this tapestry of dreams, as if it's through a veil. And its inner sight sustains this outer scene. So it holds up all of this creation, this outer scene. Now, I want to continue a little more, and then I'll ask someone to read some things, perhaps. A finer consciousness with happier lines. That line has always been so powerful for me. A finer consciousness with happier lines. It has a tact our touch cannot attain. A purity of sense we never feel. Semicolon. Its intercession with the eternal ray inspires our transient earth's brief-lived attempts at beauty and the perfect shape of things. Oh. This finer consciousness with its happier lines, it has a tact that our touch is, of course, a sense, one of our senses, cannot attain. It has a purity of sense, because now he gives us sense in that next line. We never feel. But its intercession with the eternal ray inspires our transient earth's brief-lived attempts. Attempts at what? At beauty and the perfect shape of things. So even though Aswapati, Sri Aurobindo, is climbing this stair, this world stair, he is seeing things that are on earth as well, and that come to us from these higher realms. And I would like to ask someone to read from the lexicon, if they would, especially form, this idea of the form. Can someone read that? Maybe Jayashri?
I don't have the lexicon is on the
Oh,
computer.
okay. Does someone else have the lexicon? They could read to us.
I just need to find it.
Okay. Because this is so key to the manifestation of humanity on earth.
Form is the basic means of manifestation, and without it, it may be said that the manifestation of anything is not complete. Even if the formless logically precedes form, yet it is not illogical to assume that in the formless, form is inherent and already existent in a mystic latency. Otherwise, how could it be manifested? Letters on Yoga.
I think that's very clear. Very clear. It's the basic means of manifestation. And so on earth, we take birth in a body. And even though we were formless before, when we take form, it's out of the formless as a result of the formless that is already existent. And he calls it in a mystic latency. How beautiful. Otherwise, how could it be manifested? Please continue.
Each form is a symbol of some divine power, vibhuti, concealed in it, and to the seeing eye, each finite carries in it its own revelation of the infinite. Essays on the Gita.
So beautiful. So this vibhuti is concealed in every form. As Mother tells us, the divine is in all of us. And she is in all of us. And so, although we are finite at the moment in these bodies, there's no doubt that the divine is in each of us, waiting to be revealed. Please carry on.
Practically, therefore, all form is only an operation of consciousness impressing itself with presentations of its own workings. The Upanishads.
Carry on.
The form is the manifestation or appearance, the idea is the truth, the form is phenomenon, the idea is reality.
Ah,
In philosophy and yoga.
next.
The form of that which is in time is or appears to be evanescent, but the self, the substance, the being that takes shape in that form is eternal and is one self, one substance, one being with all that is, all that was, all that shall be. But even the form is in itself eternal and not temporal, but it exists forever in possibility, in power, in consciousness, in the eternal. Essays Divine and Human.
This sentence has always been so important to me, that the form of that which is in time is, then he says, or appears to be evanescent. But the self, the substance, the being that takes shape in that form is eternal and is one self, one substance, one being with all that is, all that was, all that shall be. But even the form is in itself eternal. Isn't that an extraordinary statement? But even the form is in itself eternal and not temporal. But it exists forever in possibility, in power, in consciousness, in the eternal. The only way I believe I can understand that sentence is that as we evolve higher and higher into the realm of the supermind and become supramentalized, there will still be form. It will, even Mother says, it will be something like the human form, but much transformed, of course. It will not have organs. It will not have to eat. It can take all that it needs from the air. It will be all powerful, all beautiful, all love. And so that it exists forever in possibility, in power, in consciousness, in the eternal. Now we have two more and we'll finish.
Forms on earth do not last. They do in other planes. Because these forms are too rigid to grow, expressing the progress of the spirit. If they become plastic enough to do that, there is no reason why they should not last. Letters on Yoga. Can I continue?
Yes.
The Mother. And ultimately, all form is a symbol. All forms. Our form is a symbol, not a very brilliant one, I admit.
Well, as we are now, very true, very true. So we got a good understanding of form now and what it means. And so this gossamer is a very fine, filmy substance, like cobwebs, spun by small spiders. And you can see them in the air in calm weather, especially in autumn, very thin and light. So it's a gossamer marriage hall of mind with form. And that's where we are now. We're in this marriage hall of mind with form. And I have something by Nolini that I would like to share with you. I know we're going a little late, but it has been very important to me for many years. And I can find it in just a second. And it's not very long, but I really think I should share it. Okay, here, where is it now? Okay, here it is. It's in his book, Poets and Mystics. Man today happens to be so sophisticated, artificial, material, cerebral, that a fallback seems to be necessary for him to take a new leap forward onto a higher ground. The pure aesthete is a closed system with a consciousness immured in an ivory tower. But man is something more, a curious paradox. Man can reach the highest, realize the integral truth when he takes his leap, not from the relatively higher levels of his consciousness, his intellectual and aesthetic and even moral status, but when he can do so from his lower levels, when the physico-vital element in him serves as the springing board, the decent and the beautiful, the classic grace and aristocracy form one aspect of man, the aspect of light. But the aspect of energy and power lies precisely in him where the aboriginal and the barbarian find also a lodging. Man, as a mental being, is naturally sattvic, but prone to passivity and weakness. His physico-vital reactions, on the other hand, are obscure and crude, simple and vehement, but they have life and energy and creative power. They are there to be trained and transfigured, made effective instruments of a higher illumination. So, could someone read the lines from the beginning in this extraordinary passage, which began on page 103?
I can read Nariti.
Okay, wonderful.
Shall I start from the line that says the golden issue of Mind's Labyrinth?
Yes, perfect. Labyrinth.
Labyrinth.
Mhm.
The golden issue of Mind's Labyrinth plots the riches unfound or still uncaught by our lives, unsullied by the attaint of mortal thought, abide in that pellucid atmosphere.
Pellucid. Pellucid.
Pellucid atmosphere.
Good.
Our vague beginnings are overtaken there. Our middle terms sketched out in prescient lines,
Prescient.
prescient lines. Our finished ends, anticipated live. This brilliant roof of our descending plane, intercepting the free boon of heaven's air, admits small inrushes of a mighty breath, or fragrant circuits through gold lattices. It shields our ceiling of terrestrial mind from deathless suns and the streaming of God's rain, yet canalizes a strange irised glow, and bright dews drip from the immortal's sky, a passage for the powers that move our days, occult behind this grosser nature's walls, a gossamer marriage hall of mind with form is hidden by a tapestry of dreams. Heaven's meanings steal through it as though a veil. Its inner as
As
through
a
as
veil.
through a veil. Its inner sight sustains this outer scene. A finer consciousness with happier lines, it has attacked. Our touch cannot attain a purity of sense we never feel. Its intercession with the eternal ray inspires our transient earth's brief-lived attempts at beauty and the perfect shape of things.
Thank you. This was a very challenging passage, and you read it quite well. We could go over and over this passage many, many times. We haven't discussed these boons of heaven. We haven't discussed so many things that are in these lines, but hopefully we've opened a small door into these fragrant circuits that come through gold lattices, these small inrushes of a mighty breath. And yet these bright dews that drip from the immortal skies. that is a passage for the powers that move our days. It is a passage, and it is occult behind this grosser nature's walls. It is not quite seen. And Sri Aurobindo defines occult as something that is more the Western mind's definition. He says we don't have that feeling of the occult here. We have that feeling that it's just something that is going to be realized eventually. So it's not really occult or hidden in that way. So we we then see this gossamer marriage hall of the mind with form. And I know, Vladimir, you could say a lot about that. Shall we go on a few minutes more and you can say a little bit?
Oh, no, it's we are full. We'll have full cup of
Okay.
presents.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you all, and namaste. Namaste.
Narjan.
Namaste.
Namaste.
Namaste.